Hey everybody, welcome to the Chapter 2 guided assignment for BUA 220. That's business statistics. Let's just jump into it and get it done. I'm going to teach you a few tools that might be helpful for the rest of your assignment work for Chapter 2. So the first, we just have like a little frequency table here, and I'll show you kind of how to do it the old-fashioned way. And then when we move forward, I'll show you how to use Excel to be more effective. So frequency is just the number of occurrences in, say, a survey. And so here we had a survey that had A, B, and C as the possible responses. There were 120 total responses, 60 of which were A, and 24 of which were B, and 36 of which were C. So if we were to add those all up, we would see it does indeed come out to 120. And then the relative frequency is just the frequency of a given response, so in this case A, divided by the total. So 60 divided by 120 gives us 0.5. Or 50% of all the responses were A. 24 divided by 120 gives us 0.2. So 20% of all the responses were B, and 36 divided by 120 gives us 0.3. So 30% of all responses were C. We add those up and we'll see that they add up to 1, which they should, right? Which 1 is the same as 100%. So there's a really basic frequency table. You can see how valuable that is when we're trying to summarize the data. Rather than someone just giving me the numbers, now I can look at that really quick and see what percentage of respondents said A, B, or C, and also see their total frequency related to the total number of respondents. All right, so there's the first one. Pretty easy. I'll use check my work. All right, we'll go to number 2. All right, so now we've got this bunch of data here. So 55 members of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Each observation indicates the primary position played by the Hall of Famer: pitcher, catcher, first base, second base, third base, shortstop, left field, right, center field, and right field. And then it wants us to do a frequency table here, or a frequency distribution, and then the relative frequency to 3 decimals. So this would stink. I could go through and just count pitchers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. But instead, I can use Excel. So I'm just going to copy this, and then I'm going to open Excel. Eventually. There it goes. And I'll go ahead and just paste it in here. If it bugs you that like some are on the left and some are on the right, because it seems like Excel is sorting the letters on the left and the numbers on the right, you can. It kind of bugs me, so I'm going to just go and like say I want them all centered. That looks nicer, but you don't have to do that. Let's rearrange my windows here. All right. So I can use an Excel function called COUNTIF to do all this counting for me, so I don't have to do it by hand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the categories here. We have P for pitcher, H for catcher, 1 for first base, 2 for second base, 3 for third base, S for shortstop, L for left field, C for center field, R for right field. There's all our positions. Again, because it bugs me for no other reason, I'm going to tell it to center it. Okay. So I can use this Excel function that's where I do equal count if, and then it asks for the range. So this is like telling Excel where to look. So I'm saying look in all of these cells, B2 through F12, comma, and then for the criteria, I'm going to click on this cell, so P. So I'm telling Excel, look through all of those, B2 through F12, and count any P's, capital P's, that you see in there. I hit enter, it counts it for me. So I can do a couple things. I can just keep doing that function for each of these. Or I can use Excel's fill function and grab this little nail on the lower right side and then pull it down to fill. The problem is when I use the fill function, it moves everything down. So when I fill down to H here, it's going to look now at H instead of P. So it assumed I moved one down, and it's going to shift down my entire area here. And I don't want it to do that. I want it to keep looking at this same area. So if I want to save the work of having to type it out each time, I can change my formula to have it lock on certain cells. And the way I do that is using a $sign. So if I put $signs on either side of that B in B2, now I'm telling Excel, when I use the fill, you don't move that B2. It stays B2. And then I'll do the same thing on the F12. So now what I'm telling Excel when I use the fill tool is always look at B2 through F12. Don't change that, but do change the A variable here. So A14, so it's looking for P's. And then the next one will be A15, where it's looking for H's, and then A16, etc. So that's a way to save yourself some work. You don't have to do it that way. You could just type in the COUNTIF and put the information each time. But once I have the formula set up like that, I can grab this little nail, fill down, and it will just do all the work for me. So now I can just put in my frequencies. 7. I don't trust the assignment. I can even get the total. I believe it said 55, but let's just double check. Yep, 55 total. And then it wants the relative frequency. Remember that the relative frequency is just the number of occurrences divided by the total. So the relative frequency for pitchers is going to equal the number of pitchers divided by the total number of players. Now again, I have this same problem. If I just try to fill that down, the next time it's going to have an issue because now it's looking at 9 divided by this cell here. So we want it to stay locked on B23. So again, I can use the $signs to say, stay locked on this one. Don't move that one down when I fill. And then I can use the fill tool. And then it says 3 decimals, so I can go to home, number, reduce my decimals down to 3, so it does all that work for me. And now it's pretty easy. And those all add up to 1 or 100%. So there I have my frequency and my relative frequency of the number of each of these positions in the Baseball Hall of Fame. So now it wants me to do just a little bit of analysis here. What position provides the most Hall of Famers? I can see that that's right field. What position provides the fewest? Second base. What outfield position, L, C, or R, provides the most Hall of Famers? So if I just limit my data set to these 3, still right field, right? And compare infielders, 1, 2, 3, and S. So they don't count pitchers and catchers. And outfield, left, center, and right. So if I look at 1, 2, 3, and S, I can come over here and like do a sum of those, or I can just look down here on Excel. It tells me the sum. So there's 18 infielders, and then there are 21 outfielders. So we're going to say there are more outfielders in the Hall of Fame than infielders. Check our work, make sure we didn't make a mistake. And we didn't because we're smart. We got them all. All right, last one. So this one says the following data are for 30 observations involving two categorical variables, X and Y. The categories for X are A, B, and C, and the categories for Y are 1 and 2. So they want us to develop what's called a cross tabulation. What's a little confusing is that Excel calls, instead of calling this cross tabulation, they call it a pivot table. So I'm going to show you how to make a pivot table in Excel. So here they give us the data file, so I can click on it to download it. And again, this works a lot better if you download it to the desktop version of Excel, but you can do it in the online. I'll open the file. It'll take a second. There it is. I'll hit enable editing. I'll resize that so it will let me open that. All right, so here we have all of our same data that we have right here. So to create my pivot table, I'm just going to highlight all of my data. And again, this is the kind of thing that you could do just by counting stuff or whatever, but learning how to use Excel is going to just make this so much easier for you as the semester progresses and as you continue in business. So take the time to learn it. And then I'm going to insert a table, and I'm going to choose a pivot table. And it's going to say, is the data you have highlighted the right data? And it is. And then it wants to know where I want it to put that pivot table. And I'm going to say, do it in the existing worksheet. And I'll just have it do it right here at E2. I hit OK. And it brings up this pivot table creator. So the first thing I want to do is look at how they have their answer table set up, where they have X values as the rows and Y values as the columns. So I'm going to grab X and move it down to rows, and grab Y and move it to columns. So you can see it's starting to build me a table that looks very similar to this one, with 1 and 2 as columns and A, B, and C as rows. And then for values, I'm going to choose observation. And you'll see that when it starts, it gives us sum of observation, which means it's using these observation numbers as if they are numerical values, as if somehow observation 30 is 30 times greater than observation 1, which isn't true. These are just labels, right? So rather than us looking at a sum of the observations, we want to edit that, and we're going to go to value field settings, and we're going to say just take a count of those observations. And that lets us see that each of these observations has the same value, which is 1. They each one is a separate observation. Okay, so now that we've done that, we have our pivot table or cross tabulation, and we can fill it in. So A has 5 and 0 and a total of 5. B has 11, 2, and 13. 2, 10, and 12. And then the totals are 18, 12, and 30. So let's just take a look real quick and try to understand what a cross tabulation is teaching us, or demonstrating is valuable to help us understand and see that we can see these relationships between X and Y. So when A is X, the value of Y is 1, 5 of the 5 total times, and 2, 0 of the 5 total times. So we're seeing how things are related or connected to each other. B, there's 11 ones and 2 twos. And then C, there's 2 ones and 10 twos. So that gives us some information that can be valuable to us. So the second question says, compute the row percentages. So again, instead of having to do this all with a calculator where we would divide, right, like we would divide 5 by the total in the row, 5, so it'd be 100%. We can just have Excel do this for us. I'm going to actually close my pivot table fields here just to make it easier to see. I can just right click. Actually, I'm going to choose the whole table there and then right click and see this says show values as. So this one wants our row percentages. So I'm going to say show percentage of row total. And it's just presented to me. It says to do it to 1 decimal. So I'll go up here to home, number, and then change it to, change it. It's not liking that. I think it just wants me to do just the numbers. Home, number, 1 decimal. There we go. All right, so for A, 100% of the values are 1, 0% of the values are 2, so for a total of 100% in that row. For B, 84.6% of the values are 1, and 15.4% of the values are 2. And again, that adds up to 100% total for the row. For C, 16.7% of the values are 1, 83.3% of the values are 2. That's 100. All right. C wants us to compute column percentages. So again, choose the whole thing, and then I go show values as, and now I want a percent of the column total. So now we're looking at the columns. So for 1, 27.8% of the values are A, 61.1% of the values are B, and 11.1% of the values are C, for a total of 100%. And for 2, 0% are A, 16.7% are B, 83.3% are C, for a total of 100. And that wants us to describe the observed relationship between the variables X and Y. So for category A values are blank associated with category 1 values. So we're going to say, so I'm going to look here, A associated with 1, and we're going to say always, right? When we have an A, it's always a 1 and never a 2. So we're going to say always. Category B values are blank associated with category 1, and we're going to say usually. And then category C values are blank associated with category 2. Again, usually. Most of the time we observe if we have a C, we have a 2. We'll check our work. We nailed it. I hope that was helpful. I hope you learned to use a couple tools in Excel and that you'll actually take the time to get comfortable with these tools because it will help you moving forward. Have a great day and have a great week. And as always, don't be afraid to reach out if I can help.